Of course, law and politics eventually took Lincoln to the Illinois state capitol in Springfield. As a partner at Stewart and Lincoln, Lincoln and Layman, and later Lincoln and Herndon, he became one of the best known and most successful lawyers in the state. He was involved in more than 5,000 cases in his 23-year legal career. He argued thousands before the Illinois district and circuit courts, more than 300 before the Illinois Supreme Court, and better than 70 in federal courts. He argued criminal cases, most famously defending accused murderer William Armstrong. Though it was 11 o'clock at night and he was standing 150 feet away, Donald recounts, of the key witness in the case, he claimed that he could see the attack clearly by the light of a nearly full moon shining directly overhead. Producing a farmer's almanac during his cross-examination, Lincoln showed to a court that roared with laughter that at the time of the attack the moon had already set. Lincoln won acquittal and much praise for his ingenuity. He argued corporate cases, often representing railroad companies, before the Illinois Supreme Court. His winning arguments earned him much notice and high fees. His highest fee, in fact, was $5,000 from the Illinois Central Railroad, the modern-day equivalent today of about $170,000 for one case. Most years, Lincoln's practice earned him about $2,000, but he came to own real estate valued at $5,000 and a personal estate of $12,000. This would be the equivalent today of a $70,000 income, $170,000 in real estate, and a $400,000 personal estate. By the time he left for Washington, in other words, Lincoln would have been a man of considerable wealth in 1850 Springfield. His rise was truly stunning from the log cabin. Wealth, however, was not enough to fulfill Lincoln's ambition. He desired reputation and position, and if he was truly going to make his mark on the world, he needed wider fame outside his home state. Making a name for himself nationally was a third trial. After 4 terms as a leading Whig in the Illinois legislature, Lincoln won election in 1846 to the United States House of Representatives. He took up cause there against Democratic President James Polk and his Mexican War. He claimed that Polk was fighting a war strictly for military glory, that attractive rainbow, in Lincoln's words, that rises in showers of blood. Unfortunately for Lincoln, he gave his most high-profile speech on the subject, one in which he demanded that the president identify the exact spot where Mexico had begun the war, just 1 month before a treaty ended the war and ceded present-day California, Utah, Nevada, and parts of Arizona, New Mexico, and Colorado to the United States. Polk had won a tremendously popular victory, and Lincoln's first appearance on the national stage appeared to be an enormous embarrassment. Lincoln left Congress in 1849, and it would be several years before he would again seek election to national office as a result of a third call to adventure that we will explore in a moment. For now, it is worth noting that with his 1858 Senate race, and particularly his debates with Stephen Douglas, which were widely reprinted and consumed, Lincoln grew his national reputation. And from the fall of 1859 through Election Day 1860, Lincoln simply outworked his competitors for the Republican presidential nomination and for the election, giving high-profile and widely reprinted speeches in Columbus, Cincinnati, Milwaukee, New York, and New Haven. While William Seward, Salmon Chase, and other leading rivals for the nomination chose to stay home, Lincoln's well-received speeches brought him ever wider fame and reputation. Lincoln's second hero's journey from the log cabin to the White House equipped him with the wherewithal, the skill set, and the position to make good on his ambition to change the world. Now, immediately upon Lincoln's departure from Washington in 1849, began the political controversy that would inspire his return. It has been suspected by many in the North, or had been suspected by many in the North, that Polk's war had been waged in the South against Mexico to open new states for slavery. I am a naturally anti-slavery man, Lincoln would later say. If slavery is not wrong, nothing is wrong. I cannot remember when I did not so think and feel. New slave states would threaten Lincoln's long-standing hope, and the hope of many Americans, going back to the founders, that the monstrous injustice of slavery, as Lincoln called it, would slowly but surely disappear from the United States. The Missouri Compromise of 1820 fueled that hope, by outlawing slavery above the Mason-Dixon line in the old Louisiana Territory. But now, if new slave states were allowed to open in the West and the lands acquired from Mexico, the domestic slave trade could again flourish, and the slave power could add to its numbers in Congress. Henry Clay struck a compromise, and Lincoln supported it, that attempted to end the controversy and save the Union by bringing California in as a free state, while allowing popular sovereignty, or the will of the people, to decide whether the New Mexico and Utah territories would be forever free or slave. Lincoln now believed that the debate over extending slavery was settled forever, in his words. There was a good chance that free states would be carved out of the New Mexico territory, since its climate was not ideal for cultivating cotton or tobacco. And Utah, surrounded as it would be by free states, would likely follow suit. However, Lincoln received his third call to adventure in 1854 when Senator Stephen Douglas's Kansas-Nebraska Act repealed the Missouri Compromise and reopened the Kansas and Nebraska territories to the possibility of slavery. Excuse me. These two territories, consisting of modern-day Kansas and Nebraska, much of Wyoming, Colorado, and Montana, and parts of North and South Dakota, would answer the slave question through popular sovereignty. The people, stated Douglas's act, were, quote, perfectly free to form and regulate their domestic institutions in their own way. Lincoln objected on principle, and he feared a broader conspiracy to allow slavery in any and every state in the Union. I hate it, Lincoln said of the Kansas-Nebraska Act, because of the monstrous injustice of slavery itself. I hate it because it deprives a Republican example of its just influence in the world, causes the real friends of freedom to doubt our sincerity, and especially because it forces so many really good men amongst ourselves into an open-air battle with the very principles of civil liberty, criticizing the Declaration of Independence and insisting that there is no right principle of action but self-interest. Stepping into the battle against the extension of slavery, Lincoln re-entered politics and began a new journey. Once again, Lincoln would confront a long road of trials. His first trial reminds us of the recurrent motif in world mythology, the slaying of the dragon, of the dark hero. On encountering the power of the dark, writes Campbell, the hero may overcome and kill it. Stephen Douglas was Lincoln's dragon, whom Lincoln sought to defeat in the 1858 senatorial campaign. Now, it should be said that Douglas is not nearly so dark and ominous as a dragon. In fact, at 5'4", he stood a full foot shorter than Lincoln. This was not your typical David and Goliath story. And of course, the two were political opponents, not mortal enemies. Neither was actually trying to kill the other. Anyway, Lincoln and Douglas had known each other going back 20 years. They had confronted each other in the Illinois Supreme Court, in the Illinois legislature, and even in the United States Congress. In fact, the two had already debated Kansas-Nebraska and slavery twice before. On October 3rd, 1854, Douglas returned to Springfield to give a speech in defense of his bill in the lower chamber of the state capitol. As the excited crowd filed out following Douglas's rousing speech, Lincoln stood in the stairway announcing that he would return the next day to respond. He was out there yelling. People are trying to walk out, and Lincoln's getting in their way, asking everyone to come back. On the 4th, with Douglas himself seated in front, Lincoln railed against the bill and against slavery for 3 hours, the two bickering back and forth throughout. No man, Lincoln declared, is good enough to govern another man without that other's consent. I say this is the leading principle, the sheet anchor of American republicanism.